Hi, I'm going to share my thoughts on SolarWinds breach and the security lessons which we can learn from it. I have a disclaimer. Whatever opinion I'm going to express here is my personal. I'm not really representing any organization's viewpoint and including my employer's opinion. Here is the discussion outline. SolarWinds breach is one of the major security events. It not only affects the SolarWinds organization, it can also affect all the customers of SolarWinds who are using their network monitoring tools. There's too much of information overload on this event. So I'm going to talk about two topics related to this breach. First, some background information about the SolarWinds breach, which includes how it happened and what's the impact to the customers of SolarWinds and the actions the malicious actor is taking after compromise. This understanding is essential to move into the second topic, which is about proactive security defense towards the organizations. In order to do so, it's important to learn the lessons from the cybersecurity breach of SolarWinds and apply that learnings towards the organization's security defense. So let's start with the background and context. So before we go further, it's essential that we understand what is SolarWinds software and what is SolarWinds Orion platform is about. SolarWinds software is primarily a network management tool, which pulls the information from all the connected systems. So then SolarWinds Orion platform is a kind of a bundle of different products which are packaged into one platform. So which does all the network monitoring functions and security monitoring and related functions. So then other thing is this SolarWinds platform provides the ability to centrally manage the IT environment. So and that's one of the reasons why it's very popular. And additionally, the SolarWinds platform stores the credentials of all the connected systems, which includes some privileged access credentials locally into its database. As a result, the compromise of SolarWinds is not only going to impact the SolarWinds environment, it's going to impact all other IT environment of the user organizations. As I mentioned, SolarWinds is having a privileged access to the connected systems, and it includes, domain administration and all other enterprise administrator credentials. Now, the impact to the organization from SolarWinds breach can come from three ways. First, it's a direct case. When any of the customers of SolarWinds downloaded a malicious embedded software from their update server, it can directly impact their environment. Then, even when an organization is not using the SolarWinds application in their environment for IT environment monitoring, the red team tools stolen from the FireEye breach can be used to exploit any of the vulnerabilities found in the organizations, even if they are not using the SolarWinds within their organization. Third, even again in this case also, when the organizations are not using any SolarWinds tools, the security risk can come from the service providers who are using SolarWinds in their environment and use that system to provide services to all other their customers. So this is a general overview of how the malicious SolarWinds software gets distributed to the customers of SolarWinds. Then how the malware operates after it's getting downloaded and installed in the customer environment. After the malware embedded software is downloaded into the customer network, the malicious payload or the malware embedded update is getting executed in the customer environment. While executing, the binary performs some kind of predefined checks. First of all, it would not execute any malicious things for up to 2 weeks. Then it also checks for all other conditions. which includes whether the malware is operating in a kind of a test or a sandbox environment. It also checks whether any of the excluded IP ranges and excluded organizations are wherein this is executed. Then it also checks for whether any of the excluded security software like endpoint detection services software are operating within this environment. If all the conditions are met, then it contacts the command and control server and gets further instructions from there. Then, additionally, in the meanwhile, it also gathers the credentials from the in-memory analysis and also by compromise of the locally stored credentials from the SolarWinds database. When the malicious update is installed, it creates a backdoor. Then after that, human actors take control. They get into the organization's computer by lateral movement and establishing a mechanism for persistence within the affected organization. Now here is another method called the golden SAML attack, which was perpetrated by this particular malware after infecting an organization. As we've seen just in the previous example, the malware steals the credentials from the affected organization's environment. Then in this case, if it steals the credentials of ADFS or Active Directory Federation Services, which is used to provide federation of identity from the on-premise to the cloud applications. When they compromise, they steal the keys and certificates used to sign the SAML responses. Then they misuse that to access the cloud resources. So this was one of the methods exhibited by the malware in the affected organizations. So now the question arises, how did this breach happen and how the attackers were able to get into the SolarWinds environment? As per the SEC filing or Security Exchange Commission filing by the SolarWinds, they have appointed a security investigation agency or a third party to investigate how the attackers were able to breach into their network. But on a high level, it appears that the attackers compromised the software development build systems in SolarWinds environment. And using that compromised approach, they were able to insert malicious code into the software development systems. Then they used a valid digital certificates to sign the malicious embedded code and before it gets distributed to the customer. Since it was signed with a valid certificate, the security monitoring systems did not flag this as a suspicious content. We need to think about long-term plan also, because that's essential to make sure that such events are not occurring in future. In a way, the security breach of SolarWinds needs to be taken as a valuable lessons for organization so that they can consider improvement plans to strengthen their organization's defense. So now I will transition to the next segment of the presentation, that is about proactive security measures to embed resilience into the organization's way of working to resist it from the cyber attacks. To strengthen the organization's defense as a proactive approach, my recommendation is to follow the layered approach to cybersecurity risk management. Three approaches to cybersecurity risk management are strategic, tactical, and operational. Strategic approach is about evaluating the effectiveness of enterprise-level common controls, which includes perimeter-level controls operating in the edge of the network, such as firewall, intrusion prevention systems, and security gateway. Then the tactical approach is about evaluation of controls which are required for the internal business units and entities. Then the operational approach is focusing on the effectiveness of system-specific technical controls to withstand cyber attacks when protections offered by the strategic layer and tactical layer are bypassed. I am going to simulate the proactive measures to the solar winds environment. Uh, this approach can be replicated in your organization also. And for the purpose of simulation, I'm going to use the publicly available information of SolarWinds, which includes the Security Exchange Commission filings and annual reports and all other information are publicly available. Let's get started with the strategic approach. Here is the high-level IT ecosystem of the SolarWinds. So they acquired at least 22 companies over a period of time. And they have 10 branches in multiple cities within United States and some other countries. Then there were 49 subsidiary companies who were part of the SolarWinds ecosystem. As I mentioned before, they have around 300,000 customers, then 3,000 plus employees within US and outside of US. Then of course there are third-party vendors, either they provide cloud and data center services or some other development services or connected services. This understanding of the ecosystem is important because this helps us to understand the attack surface and also the entry points for the cybersecurity risk into the organization. Then the next aspect is security risks, which might hinder the organization's business objective. In this case, these are the security risks which might hinder the SolarWinds business objectives. There are multiple risk factors indicated by SolarWinds in their annual reports, but these 7 are security risks which are going to hinder their objective of business objective. Now, next is a threat profile. This is again based on the available information. You can see some few categories here, like assets, which are part of the organization's ecosystem, data to protect, then the threats, threat actors, and risks. This information will help us to understand the overall security posture, how this can happen. When we have the IT ecosystems and business objectives and the threat profile information and information to be protected, it will help us to assess the overall effectiveness of security controls operating in that environment. That can happen in this way. Cyber kill chain can be used to assess the effectiveness of existing security capabilities, and it can also be used to identify the improvement opportunities and strengthen the security architecture. So now let's move into the tactical approach. As I mentioned, a tactical approach is about the security requirements to the internal entity, which is operating within the organization like business units. As per the SEC filing, SolarWinds indicated they have an R&D department, which is developing the software products for SolarWinds. So now, because of that, let's use the secure development environment as our approach to consider in this tactical layer. Again, in the SEC filing, the SolarWinds indicated a vulnerability found in the software development build system was exploited by the attacker. So now it's essential, given that context, to secure the development environment. And here is the generalized overview of the development environment. So we need to consider ways to improve the development environment. For that, we can consider multiple parameters, as you see here, the development environment system security, identity and access management, and threat and detection monitoring, and application security. Under which you have a lot of other things to consider, which are listed down here. So now let's move into the operational approach. This is about embedding security resiliency into the application itself. And given that consideration, let's take a look at the SolarWinds deployment. Here is a simple deployment, meaning it covers a small segment of the network. But nevertheless, it helps us to understand the components and how it can be deployed. It has a few components. First is the SolarWinds Orion server that's connected to the database, because that database stores all the information pulled from the monitored systems, like this here. The network switches, servers, applications, storage devices, and all that sort of assets. Then you also have admin console, which can be accessed by the browser. So now let's move into the complex deployment scenario. So in this case, this is SolarWinds is deployed in multiple segments and multiple data centers, multiple locations. And as a result, they have different Orion servers in different networks. Then all are connecting to the centralized console. And there is also a kind of admin console that can be accessed through the browser. Then there is a database server, which stores all the collected information and provides appropriate analysis for the IT administrators to make corrective actions. So the important step in the operational approach is about understanding the different IT components used within a particular solution and embedding security controls to make it resilient. In this case, you can see different components involved in the Orion deployment. Host or server, that is a Windows server that is primarily to host the application and also the database and polling engine of the Orion software. Then you have the applications which are running on top of the operating systems on the server. Then you have a database, then you have a network connectivity, then the hosting environment. So now another important thing to note here is this one, okay, because these are the TCP IP ports used by the SolarWinds Orion platform for monitoring, and some risky ports here like SSH are used, and there are some other ports like 1777. This is something kind of a proprietary protocol used by the Orion platform, and apparently this protocol was used by the malicious actor for the C2 communication. So now having this understanding will help to embed security resiliency into the each components, and also it helps to strengthen the monitoring mechanisms so that any abnormal behavior is alerted appropriately. And with that, we reach the conclusion. And my idea is primarily to see how multiple layers of security can be implemented. And I took the example of SolarWinds to demonstrate that point. And I hope this can help to securely design the architecture for the organization with zero trust principles and effective monitoring controls. Thank you.